Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body Broadcast with Austin and Marty, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. Not a nutrition or training topic specifically, but we're going to talk about goal setting realistic goals, maybe the differences between setting goals as a competitor and setting goals as a non-competitor, because, and I'm sure Marty will agree, I see it can be really hard for some people to set goals and adhere to a plan or stay consistent or whatever you want to call it with no dates or with no time frames. So going to kind of talk about some different things and maybe some different perspectives on this.
Yeah, absolutely, because you kind of see that all the time is, what are my goals? And I've chronically and constantly asked a lot of my boys and girls, what are your goals? And they say some pretty, I've seen all the way from get the pro card, become Mr. or Mrs. Olympia, all the way down to I just want to be on stage and not embarrass myself, right? And then, of course, for the non-competitive goals, there could be things like, I want to fit into this dress, I want to look good for my wedding, I want to look good for vacation. So there's lots of things, I believe, that we can add in here to help you out with your goals. And the number one thing I would say, since we are both coaches here, and I don't know if you would say anything along the lines of this, but I'm guessing you would, Austin, is I always say my goals are your goals as long as it doesn't end up detrimental to your health. Sorry?
No, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, and the absolute number one reason I say that is because I don't want them to get any kind of unrealistic expectations from things, because there's expectation, then there's unrealistic ones, and I do want them to know that from off the hop that that's not my ball game. In accordance with, I don't have an agenda. Like, as in, someone comes up and I see this girl per se, and I go, wow, that girl will be a dominating women's physique competitor, and she says she either wants to do bikini or women's physique. So my way around that is saying, when I will say what I just said to them, I see you as a women's physique competitor. If that's not your thing, that is too whatever for you, that's cool. You have to do your goals, regardless of what I think you could do well at. And even the verbiage and the language on that can sometimes be hard to get across, because you can't, as a coach, and this is my opinion, you can't as a coach put someone into a box and all of a sudden you're training them for women's physique when they're like, I didn't want to do this. So then not only that can create resentment down the line, but now their goals aren't being fulfilled. The happiness just isn't there, right? Because they come to you with their goals. Think of us as guys that soup up cars. You don't come in saying, hey, I want to over chip my engine, and you're putting up a spoiler on the back thinking that no, this is what you need most. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. And I feel that a lot of people do get pushed into certain things, whether it's competing in a specific division or just competing in general, because let's be honest, I mean, a big part of people marketing is maybe posting photos of their competitors, right? So, like, well, what if I have tons of non-competitors that are really, really good? And well, that's not gonna help my business, which I get that mentality. But to me, you're really doing people a disservice at that point. I'm on the same exact page as you, where as long as something's not directly hurting someone, and hey, if they're a pro and they're making money at it, like, obviously we're gonna have a little bit more calculated risk than someone that's not.
Of course.
But at the same time, I had someone the other day. They trying to think of specifically how they stated it to me, and I've gotten other situations too where they're a bodybuilder, a competitive, and they're a pretty good one even, and they'll be in an off season, have a productive off season, and they'll say, hey, I want to do this strongman competition, or
sure,
I want to, maybe they throw me for a really big loop. Maybe they're like, I want to run a marathon. And I'm like,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, it happens, especially maybe not with like a 250-pound guy. He's probably not going to tell me that. Maybe could, but maybe it's a figure competitor or something.
Mm-hmm.
And and normally the way that I receive it is they're hesitant. They're very, very hesitant to tell me, or like I'm going to be upset or something, which is never ends up being the case if they've talked to me enough. Because I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, this is totally your goal. All I'm going to say is this will not obviously help your muscle growth goals. This is going to be, we're going to backpedal there. But if you want to do something else that you enjoy or that you think you'll enjoy, I'm all for it. I'm going to give you the information. I'm going to tell you this might be what happens to your physique. This is what we're going to need to change in your plan, et cetera, et cetera. And you take that information and digest it. And if you're okay with whatever changes we're going to have to make, I'm okay with them as well. That's because coaches are pushing their agenda on people. They have to realize, like, these people are paying their bills. And,
yes.
At the end of the day, they hired you to help them do what they want to do.
So I'll tell you. Go ahead. You go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and just real quick, I'm not trying to turn this into a, good coach, bad coach thing. That's not it. I'm just saying, in general, I feel like people shouldn't be afraid to express themselves if they do want to do something different.
Oh, yes. And I think that would be in the verbiage, the relationship with the coach, right? And that could be anywhere from 2 weeks into you talking to them. That could be before you are talking to them formally, because they've been following things like the Mind Body broadcast. They've been following things like OPD and just getting to know who you are. And they're like, oh my gosh, this guy is doing what he's doing. He's saying what he's saying, and he's living up to all of that, right? So I believe that once the relationship is there, there's even more clout that you can be able to say that without it being them taken as anything negatively, or like you said, you're not bashing anybody, you're not trying to hurt anybody, but you're saying this is where I can see you, like, flourishing. That's the word I'm going to use, flourishing, because and then there's it'd be like me if I kept having this diehard bodybuilding goal and I keep hiring the best bodybuilding coaches, and I would actually hope that we'll call them the best coaches would say, Marty, look, I know you love bodybuilding. However, like, to me, that's showing that they respect the both of us. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does make sense, because that to me, it just shows that they have your best interest in mind, and they're being
exactly, yeah,
and they're being realistic. Like that, and that's part of the initial. That's part of the initial goal setting conversation too.
Absolutely, that's right. Where are they then too? And that's the thing. Goals can change. I've had figure girls go down to bikini. I've had bikini girls go up to figure. Bodybuilders go down to classic. Right in the mids now, I have a classic guy that's thinking about jumping into bodybuilding just because he had to shed so much weight, and his shape probably would do pretty well in bodybuilding. So there's no shame in that, especially now with even in Canada here, we have the ability to do crossovers, and that's where you can see, do you like more of the classic posing? Do you like having a routine? Do you not like having a routine to do? So many questions, and like you said, that's in the initial conversation. I'll share kind of a story about that happened online with me, is that I had a girl that was my friend that was using a coach, and she was a bikini champion, and she ended up hiring a coach that she was talking to me. This is in person. She said, Marty, I'm really excited to do this next show. I said, oh, really? Are you going to finally jump and do your provincial bikini? She goes, no, I'm going to try regional women's physique. And that was just, of course, we'll call almost, that's like, what, 2 weight classes of a jump. We'll call it something along the lines of that, right? Let alone in a year. And obviously it's changing more things than just that. It's changing the posing, changing the level of muscularity on the female. I said, when did your goals change like that? I said, that's very fascinating. She said, yeah, I don't know. I think I just could do it. And then about a month went on, she came to divulge to me that was, she goes, well, I finally found out what it was. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, it was my coach actually who told me to do this. And it was because this gentleman wanted to have women's physique competitors, because those were, in Canada, there's only like 3 or 4 people competing, and they weren't necessarily looking like good. So he wanted to have more first place trophies, as opposed to taking a chance on competitive bikini and having her do what her actual goals were, and almost kind of shifted her mindset away from what her goals were, and it wasn't his goals. So that's just it. And again, that's not putting anybody down. That's just saying something to watch out for if you are deciding what your goals are. That's why we're saying they're your goals. not saying what coaches' goals are. So yeah, that's a true story, by the way. So yeah, that's one of the worst things that can happen, in my opinion, is that you are persuaded or doing peer pressured, whatever it is, into doing something that you don't. And then I can't even imagine. She didn't end up going through with it, thank gosh. But I can only imagine that, like, coming out the other end, what ramification that's would have had on her mind and her spirit, right? So. Yeah, so in the a couple of things to say about the strongman and the marathons, and even I have a girl, Hi Lee, that does like the Spartan races, the Tough Mudders, and like, because she wanted to do a bikini competition, and it was her ability to get lean. Her ability, we were doing some things that was just not working. Just how some people have to work significantly harder. Yes, even in bikini, which was at the time when I was younger, very upsetting for me and for her that we couldn't possibly get her towards this level. And so then she said, well, you know what, I'm going to think on it. And now she does. This is 8-9 years later. Here she is doing these races, getting better at them and loving them. And so don't ever feel that you need to stay within bodybuilding as a blanket term. Stay within figures. Stay within this. We talked about this too, I think, in another podcast. Just do what you love. Take some time off, like in the off season, especially if you do want to try this stuff. But I have girls that are hikers that used to be bikini champions. So that's other things too. Just not that here we are losing clients, right, Austin? Oh no, saying don't do this. No, that's not it at all. Just don't ignore what makes you happy. For sure. And if bodybuilding and getting better and getting on stage and winning is what makes you happy, then you friggin' make what makes you happy, and you hire us. Dun-dun-dun. Shameless self-promotion right there.
Yeah, the whole taking the moral high ground thing sometimes is it's a double-edged sword, because we can lose business, you know? And
so here's what's crazy. I'll interject you right there, is that she's still a client. I still do her workouts for it. I still do her nutrition for it. It's just been adjusted that she now goes off and does, we'll call it the Spartan training here and there in a group setting, but we still check in. We make sure her body fat's not too crazy. We switch so that obviously her cardio is a little bit higher of a priority so she doesn't die during the races. So if you're willing to work with them, and like maybe it's not your specialty, but if they've been a client for long, like this was, Lee's been a client for 8 or 9 years, and so then I get to see her doing something she enjoys. That's what fills my cup too. So therefore, I'm really glad she said it, and that's just one of the examples that I have of where that has happened quite a few times.
Yep, I've had very similar situations. I mean, not necessarily the same sports or ventures, but I mean, it definitely happens, and I don't get upset about it. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, you're going to have a better client if you have a happier client anyhow at the end of the day. So that's really, to me, it's kind of a win. Like, I've had people, I had a girl that she'd been competing probably only a few years, was a pretty high level national competitor, definitely was on her track to turn pro. It was just a matter of showing up at a couple more national shows, kind of that kind of deal. And now she does endurance sports and is a vegan.
No way. So, yeah. What kind of endurance sports?
All kinds of different, whether it's running, triathlon, Spartan race, anything like that. Just anything she can basically get her hands on.
Fun.
And hey, that's drastic, obviously. Like, to me, a little part of me inside was like, oh man, because hey, you would have been an IFBB pro very quickly, but hey, it's no skin off my back, and she's happy, and you know what? That's really all that matters at the end of the day.
Yep, no, you got it. I really like to, I think I briefly touched about this, the whole I don't want to upset you thing. That usually, of course, I do send a ha-ha to them, and it's not to play down how they're feeling or their fears or whatever, but I play it down and say, listen, there will never be a time that you can upset me if you say you want to change goals. You could be, I have gotten like oh man, you could have, won that provincial show, you could have won that national show, but again, it's always in our best interest as coaches to go with the clients and your goals as opposed to not. Like, even then, that moral high ground, like you said, you either you won't lose them let's even say worst case scenario, you lose them as a goal. They're like, I'm going to take this off on my own. That's cool. That's still going to be a walking billboard for you because A, you just said go after your goals and your dreams, and B, if they were in any kind of competitive space at all, they're still going to get asked eventually. Be like, oh, how did the show go? This just wasn't for me. Oh, my coach Austin was so supportive of it. I email him here and there and show him how I'm doing off my marathons. I still highly recommend him to people, and you will get clients passively from that too, and that's even better of a feeling because there's a past client still being a walking billboard for you.
Well, it's funny. That was actually one of the next things I was going to mention because one of my.
Okay, can you speak up there, Austin, please? Sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, right there's great.
Yeah, one of my highest referring clients was a situation just like that. She switched sports. Awesome. She does her own thing. I regularly get referrals from her for physique athletes, which
that's awesome.
And we don't even talk. We're on good terms, on Facebook and Instagram. We like photos or whatever, whatever that really means. But yeah, I'll just randomly I get referrals all the time.
To me, the liking photos of past and former clients is just showing, hey, I saw your photo. I care about your progress, and even sometimes I'll comment and be like, "This is wicked. I knew you'd do great at that." And that will not only like do I mean that to them, but that generally will mean a lot to them because now you follow through on your word, saying, "I'm excited you're following your goals and you're showing that," right? Like that's okay. We're diving a little bit too hard into good coaching 101, so we'll kind of pull the boat back here. So. What Austin said was differences between goal setting for competitors and non-competitors, and then being realistic, but not being complacent. So we did a little bit of how to do the goal settings, but let's go into that a little bit further. In other words, how to set your goal. Well, are you a first-time competitor? This would be this would tie into our very first episode, though. Should you compete? And that would be setting realistic goals with what's the word I want to use here with the interjections or the advice of your coach, or with the input. There we go, the input of your coach. So in other words, if they say, hey, I want to do a bikini competition and it's 12 weeks out, and then we see your photos, see everything, that's when also a good coach could say, you know what, that's a great goal. I think we need a little bit more time. I don't want to do anything that would be potentially dangerous, but I like your goal. You have a good shape. Or that conversation go another way, be like, okay, you have more of a figure shape. I think the 12 weeks we might be able to do it in, but this, like, so there's any kind of way that could go. And the best thing I can say to anyone out there when they're trying to come up with their goals is get an opinion of a coach. You can hire Austin and I to do kind of an assessment of where you're at. You can also ask a friend that's competed if they're not too embittered by the sport. But it is that's coming up with what your goals are, and then seeing if your timeline's realistic, seeing if that's realistic for your body shape, your body type, and then also seeing too for like the routines and things like that. Do you enjoy going out for a minute or however long it is and strutting your stuff to a routine? Do you enjoy being on stage, being judged upon completely and entirely how you look? So that's some things to really take into consider when you're making your goal settings too. And that's why I will always try to give any of my competitors 3 goals, like as in what's the number 1 goal, what's the number 2 goal, what's the number 3 goal, just so we can see if there's like things alternative like there. If they want to compete, they want to put on muscle, and then they want to do a marathon afterwards. They're like, wow. So as opposed to I want to compete and win. Does that make sense? What have you had to add to that, Austin?
Well, really nothing.
Okay,
really,
great, man. That's cool.
We run into this a lot, it seems like, which is okay.
Well, no, that's great. Yeah, it's like, damn you, Marty, stole everything out of my mouth.
Well, I mean, you're talking primarily more so on the competitive side of things, it sounds like, for people that are competing or want to compete. I think that one thing I might add to that is, and I don't like to look too terribly far ahead, but I do like to kind of ask them about, let's say they're doing a show, maybe it's their first show, especially their first show. I do like to at least briefly touch on what's your goal after your show.
Awesome.
And the reason for that is Yeah, and the reason, and you can probably see where I'm going with this. The reason for that is kind of what we talked about in the post. Go back and listen to our post-show episode, by the way. Shameless plug there.
Yep.
I definitely want them to have some kind of direction. And like I said, we talked about that in the post-show episode quite a bit. I don't like them to have just, I want to gain muscle. Like, let's talk about, perhaps goals are, I want to maintain insulin sensitivity and a good body fat and get my health markers back in line and do my blood work and all this stuff. Talk about those little things just a little bit. I think it's important to at least throw that in there. That way they're not setting themselves up for that post-show disaster period. But outside of that, I mean, I wouldn't add a whole lot.
Awesome. No, that's perfect then. So then, so let's go flat out into between the differences for goal setting for competitors versus non-competitors. So, you know what? I talked pretty much entirely on the last one. I'll let you have your first crack, and I'll see if I can add things to it. So, yeah, what do you believe the differences between goal settings for competitors and non-competitors should be similar, or you go for it?
Well, I mean, the obvious difference is no dates. If they're not, unless we're talking about doing like a photo shoot or something along those lines, or they have a wedding that they want to get in shape for or something. Let's just say it's general. And this is another thing too, is I feel like I have a lot of, and I don't know if you run into this a lot, but I have a lot of really good long-term clients that have never competed and never planned to.
Absolutely. Tons.
Yeah. And they have no problems with this, but it does happen a lot. When we say something like enjoy the process, this is that to the highest degree. It's really what it is. So they're still going to have goals, but the goal is to improve. I think that when you're looking at someone that literally just wants to improve their physique, they want to get more muscle and they want to have less body fat. That's probably the goal. To an extent over time. So I just like to kind of talk about what that process involves. In reality, the way that the process itself is really simple if you look at it in a large scope. You're going to go through periods of caloric surplus to gain muscle, and you're going to go through periods of caloric deficit to lose the fat and reset and then restart. It's going to be a cyclical thing. But But I think the important thing that we like to talk about when we're talking about their goals, or at least with them adhering to the plan and staying consistent without those dates, is I want them to learn during the process, and I want them to pick up something and learn something new every time we go through that cycle. Whether it's, we find something that works better for them training wise, or we discover that there was something wrong on their lab work or with their hormones that we didn't know about before, and we fixed that, and now they're progressing better. Or it could literally be anything. I have a client I posted not too long ago. He has a really good physique. I've never even mentioned competing, though he definitely could very easily. He walks around full six pack at like almost 230, and he's about 5'9".
Wow.
So yeah, he looks good. So, and I've never even mentioned it, even though I'm thinking, man, why don't you compete? But man, he's a smart guy for one, but we learn new stuff every time. We have, whether it's we trying new over-the-counter supplements, now we've got him so dialed in. I have him more dialed in on a lot of stuff than a lot of the competitors, as far as we figured out clear down to little minute nutrient deficiencies that he had that we couldn't see on blood work. And his body starts functioning better and he feels better. And he's so in tune with feedback and all this stuff.
Awesome.
But my point is that he just likes the process. And so he keeps getting better inevitably. And that's really the goal. And that's the reward that he gets from, his consistency.
And how long would you say he's been a client of yours?
I bet you probably close to 3 years.
Yeah.
I would consider that long at that point.
So is that a truthful statement? You had never approached one of your, we'll say, lifestyle clients and said, have you ever thought of competing? Never once?
No, of course I have.
Okay.
Of course
Okay,
I have.
good.
I just meant him specifically.
Yeah.
Him specifically. Oh yeah, I definitely do. Because hey, at the end of the day, I'm a bodybuilder, and that's where my passion lays. I'm kind of a purist in the bodybuilding sport. You know, before Facebook and Instagram, and I'm kind of like the old guy, even though I'm not old, but you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I mean,
sure do. Yeah.
I love bodybuilding and competitive bodybuilding. I know there's so much negative stuff out there now, and so many people bitch and moan and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, heck yeah, if I think someone has potential to compete, I'm probably going to bring it up to them at some point.
Yes. Yeah. And man, did you ever say the words that I love hearing, which is enjoy the process versus trust the process? That's, to me, those are two very similar looking statements, but two very different statements, right? Like I'm not going to go full in on that, but it is enjoyment. You, especially for this to be long term, you definitely have to enjoy what you're doing. You don't have to enjoy it from 365, 24/7, but you do need to enjoy it the vast majority of the time, because then why on earth are you doing it? Especially, but even then, so that will tie in to goal setting as a competitor. I will go back to what I have to say here about lifestyle, but I felt the burning need to say this. But if you go into a show and you feel it's either you have to do it or you feel that you want to win, and that's cool, but then you go and you say, do you enjoy the workouts? You don't need to enjoy every last drop of cardio. We talked about this, but do you enjoy the workouts? And there was a quote that I heard, I want to say, probably when I very first started in the gym out here in Alberta 11 years ago, was don't compete. Don't work out because you compete because you work out. And there are people that do the opposite. They'll go, oh, I see a show, and then they'll either start competing start working out to get to that show. It's where it's like, this is you, especially now with how, I don't know how it's the quality of the athletes have been down there, but up here it's only kind of increasing. Whereas if it's not something that's done for years on end and you're just starting out, and that you're the only reason you're starting out is to try to get up on stage quickly, I'll add in that term too, quickly, I think that might be something to kind of rearrange or have a chat with about that, just because especially if you're going in and you're really looking for that win or whatever, and outside of obscenely genetically gifted, 6 months is not going to realistically do it. I've seen it happen, and it's neat that it does, but give yourself more time than that, and then ask yourself, am I enjoying this process? For sure. And then again, two, if you're not enjoying the process of competing, there's no reason you can't have lifestyle goals, which would be either a photo shoot, a vacation, and when I say, and funny enough, so hi Colette, we've had such a hard time getting a show for her because of her work schedule, and then I said, you know what? I've got a really great photographer. Why don't we set something up with her? We'll treat it like a show. And man, did that excite her, Austin. So now we've got her pumped up. It's around her schedule, on her time, when she can kick the most ass. So we're both pumped. We just talked about this a couple days ago. So that's another way where I felt that was me assisting her. And then, of course, if she gets in the shape she wants for the photo shoot, and the show happens to pop up in her future, then she does it. But now it doesn't feel like she's droning on and on and on just for no quote-unquote goal, when she is a competitor and she's competed before in the past. Just the show she was doing, they got rid of in the month that she's done, so now she's feeling kind of lost. So that was kind of what we did there too. I also am going to link here too, I've got a blog called What Happens Now, which is what after post show, like, because where you get these spinning thoughts about, oh my god, the show's done. Even if you have another one, let's say coming up in the future, it's what now. So I've got something I can say on there too. And then for the seeing when people could compete or whatever, I like, I've probably said this in another podcast, I like to retain my stigma of I have turned away or turned down more potential competitors than I've accepted, and this is at least for that first show, and I like that just because that's my morality there too. I know I've left, we'll call it, business on the table for it too, and if they're willing to listen to my why on that, especially it's usually girls that want to do a bikini show in 3 months with no training, I'll say, I not only, like, I don't rudely say I'm not going to take you on, but I say I don't think this is going to be ideal for you, and this is why. So then trying to get them into knowing that the off season is important or whatever, and I would say quite a few of the time they do sign up for this and they'll go for it. But then that's also too me tying into if I see they're an extreme introvert, and that the show isn't really for them, or that they're someone that freezes up, and then the posing is hard for them. It's I think, yeah, either way, being a caring coach is letting them know those things, right? Or even saying, you know what, you don't need to be defined by this show. Especially people, and I know you've had at least a couple clients, either now or in your past, that they're looking at this as a bucket list thing. Because I know that was a fairly large thing right when bikini was starting to come out, whereas it was kind of seen as a wet t-shirt contest. And still most do think, sorry, not most, some do think that bikini is a no-muscle wet t-shirt contest. And that's cool, guys. You guys can think that, but I've seen the bikini competitors in Canada in person, and it's definitely not being rewarded in that degree at all. But that's it. Is that you don't have to do a show to get in shape, as you clearly know, and if a show isn't a realistic goal for you at this moment, that doesn't mean it couldn't be a realistic goal for you in the future. Let's use an analogy here. Is if let's say there's no credit cards or anything like this, and you say, I want to buy that car. Well, you've got $6,000. That car is $30,000. You're going to have to work to save up that $30,000 before you get that car. And that's kind of a way you can think about bodybuilding. Figures that you are going to have to build that body up until that body is worthy of the stage, if your goal is to win. Did I lose you there? Austin.